Yeah, thanks, Abby. Let me see if I can get my screen to share here. Just bear with me a sec. That one there. How's that? You guys all see that? Okay,
Yes.
great. Everybody can hear me well? Okay. Well, thanks again, Abby. And hey, listen, everyone, on behalf of the QBS committee for ACEC Massachusetts, I want to thank you for attending the event this afternoon and hearing about QBS. My name is Scott Delasternier. We have a group that are going to co-present, the materials today. Majid Lalaf, I think he has some technical difficulty, so he sadly won't be with us. But besides myself, we have Peter Valinsky here. We have Larry Riggs, Kevin Hanley, Maureen Schlebeck, and Eric Atkins. And I'll just ask to, certainly put your questions in the chat. We'll save it. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and just put your questions in the chat, and we'll address them. Okay. So listen, the purpose of today's presentation is to, educate and re-educate folks in the membership about what QBS is. And just a quick anecdote, and I've shared this with our committee, so guys, you can pretend you're hearing it for the first time. But we made an outreach to some of the membership earlier on in the season, about a QBS topic or another, and we got a note back that said, what is QBS? So I think at that moment the light bulb went off, and we said, gee, there may be an opportunity to do a member briefing here. And there are new folks that are involved in the organization that maybe are not necessarily up to speed on QBS, or maybe have kind of forgotten what the high points are, so to speak. So again, the point of today is to, again, re-educate or educate folks that looking for some new information, and also besides that, what are we doing as a committee, and in terms of steps forward? How can we conduct this outward-facing outreach to other owners and clients that we would like to have them adopt or be educated on the benefits and the merits of qualifications-based selection. That's really the person. Just some overall facts about ACEC. At a national level, obviously most of us know, but business association that consists of engineering firms, land surveying firms, and so on. Nationally, 52 state member organizations with over 5,000 firms represented, and over 500,000 employees. Locally in Massachusetts, 120 member firms, 7,000 engineers, surveyors, geologists, and scientists and professionals. So it's a great cross section of folks within our overall profession. I'm not going to read every bullet here, but one thing that I think is notable, given the subject matter today, is that we partner with public agencies to improve project delivery, and that's a nice segue into the QBS process. So what is QBS? As the name suggests, it's qualifications-based selection. And at its at a high level, you could say that the overall premise is that consultants. It's a procurement method by which consultants are selected for consultant services based on their qualifications, as opposed to based on price. And that scoping and fee discussion happens upon selection of the best qualified firm. That scoping and fee conversation happens as a secondary step, and all the benefits that come out of that process, will be discussed in great detail over the course of this presentation. QBS is is endorsed and adopted by many national professional organizations and societies. A few of them are shown on the screen here. I'll highlight, obviously ACEC, and as you'll hear, towards the end of the presentation, if you wanted to spend some time and really dig into this, if you went on the ACEC national website, and I believe it's under advocacy, there's a wealth of information that you can find there about all the benefits in great detail about QBS. But just to name a few others, American Institute of Architects and American Society of Civil Engineers as well. So who uses QBS? So, this all started by the passing by the federal government of the Brooks Act in 1972. And, the crux of it was really to protect the interests of, all the taxpayers, with the idea being that, providing consultant, engineering, surveying services, all the things that we do is at its core, it's a matter of public safety, for the constituency all around the country. And as such, we want to make sure, or the context behind the Brooks Act was to make sure that those services are going to be provided by the most qualified firms and not necessarily just based, just selected solely on price, again, in the interest of public safety. So just a kind of a high level, how we got here as to the Brooks Act. 46 states have adopted QBS laws across the country. In Massachusetts, all MassDOT, MBTA, and Massport contracts are all QBS selected, and all public building procurement happens by way of the QBS process as well. On the private side, as many of you know, they have not adopted the QBS process. And here's really the, what's the rationale behind selecting the most qualified firm. And I'm just hitting this at a high level because really, the rest of my colleagues here are going to dig into all the details as to, breaking this all down. But life cycle cost considerations, team building, technology and innovation, reduced change orders, which is a big one from a financial consideration standpoint, especially for municipalities who may be a little bit more, budget conscious, and lastly, flexible contract approaches. And so with that, I'm going to transition this over to Peter Valinsky.
Okay, hey, thanks, Scott, and hello, everybody. I think I was just unmuted, so hopefully everyone can hear me. Yep, good. So Scott just provided a list of reasons why we should select professional AE services through QBS. So I'm going to examine sort of the unique natures of professional AE services a little bit closer. Many of us, our clients included, look at professional design services as a percentage of construction. However, if we look at engineering as a percentage of total life cycle cost, it's actually only about 1%. And why is that? Well, because design impacts the cost of every successive aspect, not only from construction, but also to the operations and the long-term maintenance of the various facilities. As further noted on this slide, engineers and architects, they're creative people by nature, and QBS actually encourages creativity. AE services requires creative thinking and are of an intellectual effort. They involve investigations, analysis, and research. And as such, experience of a QBS selected design professional is highly beneficial. And I should point out that professional AE services are not a tangible commodity. The right design professional will provide owner savings, as Scott noted, through various project innovations, maybe project durability. They can produce a product that's of lower O&M costs, lower energy costs. They can improve schedule, and the right design professional, might even be able to be sensitive to various communities' values and preferences. On the other hand, if you look at low bid type of procurement, that encourages design professionals to just provide the bare bones minimum without encouraging creativity or without encouraging a cost-effective design. So Scott, if you could advance the slide. I'm just going to look at these bullets individually, and it's basically looking at the advantages of QBS. QBS teams a client with a design professional who is highly knowledgeable for a specific application. This results in a more efficient service, leading to a faster project delivery. Second bullet there is QBS selected professionals are more likely to have learned what works and what does not work. And by knowing the various pitfalls due to inexperience can lead to a higher change order cost, higher O&M costs, and therefore that's what results in the higher life cycle cost, as noted in the previous slide. Thirdly, the QBS ensures that design professionals are capable of providing a more detailed, more accurate scope of work. That allows the professionals to work closer with owners, providing less misunderstanding, less guessing on what the final outcome of this product will be. And it gives the owner that added control over costs. And lastly, I should mention that QBS helps small firms compete with larger firms. Where they can demonstrate that unique experience or the specific knowledge of local regulations or business practices, small firms can also compete at that level. Last point I want to make is that QBS is a value-based product. It's basically an investment in quality. QBS creates a productive relationship between the owner and the design professional. It creates a partnership between that owner and the engineer, each having a similar goals, common goals, and expectations. QBS also promotes a thorough understanding of the scope upfront with very much fewer surprises. It also allows the owner to get the most out of the engineer, with the results being fairer terms and conditions and reasonable prices that are acceptable to both parties. And QBS is flexible. Owners and design professionals can refine the scope of work at any time during the process to help mitigate specific risk factors, including things like potential community opposition, budget overruns, scheduling delays. This is something that you wouldn't see with a cost-based type selection. So it lowers the risk for complex projects. And lastly, I should mention that QBS also encourages competition amongst the various professionals who are best suited for each unique project. So with that, I'm going to pass the discussion off to Larry, who's going to discuss the QBS process. He's got to unmute himself.
Thanks, Peter. Sorry.
Yeah.
It is a classic process at this point after first being introduced in 1972 as the Brooks Act. And it has some well-worn history to itself. It typically begins with the owner sending out a request for a qualification statement, then taking the submittals, ranking them and shortlisting the best qualified, and then making a selection on that basis. It then, following the selection, brings them to the point of developing a scope of work, and they do that cooperatively, hopefully, and then negotiate the fees associated with that scope of work. It does provide an opportunity, and I want to double down on this, it provides an opportunity for the design consultant and the owner to begin building a workable relationship that ends up fitting the needs of the client within a budget that they can accept. Next slide, please. QBS is well suited for projects where the specific scopes of work may not have been developed at the time, and they may need to be part of the process. And the pre-selection of consultants does provide a client and owner flexibility on quickly determining what firm, what engineer that they would like to call upon to do a specific project. Sole sourcing also allows them to do selections under under certain circumstances for which that would be appropriate. It gives the owner also the opportunity to control the distribution of work depending on their needs and their priorities as well as resources. QBS process is full, but I want to make this point, is fully embedded within the federal acquisition regulations. And if you feel like reading yourself to sleep some night, just pick up part 36, and this process will be outlined in detail. Identifying the need for consultant, that's the first thing that client needs to come to grips with, and at that point develop some idea of the scope of work for the project, identifying the objectives and hopefully the deliverables. The criteria that they would normally try to incorporate within the selection process can range anywhere from certainly the professional qualifications, individual experience, specialized knowledge of the type of work that needs to be done, but also the capacity of the firm to be able to complete that work in a schedule that is provided by the client. Their QA, QC process, past performance weighs into that as well. And location and local knowledge also have an impact on the selection process. After they have gone through their criteria and developed that, normally there's an advertisement for the qualification statements. We as design consultants respond, hopefully not to an RFP, but the request after the selection is something that certainly the client will be looking for. And they may possibly have an interview at that point. Final selection of the consultant allows them to sit down and negotiate that schedule, fee, and scope of work. Next slide, please. All right, bear with me. The selection criteria that is used many times comes with a weighting. Qualifications could be 30%, 20% for individual resumes or individual assignments. So the criteria that is developed needs to be able to be relevant to the type of project that they're seeking the services for. It should also, the criteria should also be fair. I don't know how necessarily objective the weighting always is, but hopefully the process is fair and the proper selection made in the end. And last but not least, local requirements and DPE participation is something that you will always find within one of the advertisements. And now I will turn it over to Maureen, I believe.
Thank you, Larry. So now that we've talked about why we do QBS and the steps of QBS, let's get into the nuts and bolts of actually putting a project on the street. And we'll start with advertising. Some things to remember in terms of advertising. There are some legal requirements in terms of the place that you advertise and the duration. And this can be related to the size of the project and the funding source. And really our goal of advertising an RFP or an RFQ is to get an appropriate number of consultants to submit on the project. As we move on and look at the RFQ process, it's important to match the level of effort that you're asking for from the people that are submitting proposals to the value of the project. Every proposal is an investment for a consultant firm. So if you have a smaller size project and you ask for an elaborate proposal, firms are going to take a pass, and that's not what you want to see. So you want to keep that in mind. And again, not every project merits an interview. The larger projects certainly do, but it's something to think about as you're developing your RFQ and RFPs. Also, the detail that you have available is another consideration. For example, if you are expecting a proposal that includes concept development through final design, that's really difficult for someone to propose on when they don't really know what they're designing. So if you haven't gotten to the point where you've done preliminary planning concepts, you probably want to break that project into 2 pieces and put it out as 2 RFPs rather than ask for someone to propose on a alternative that hasn't yet been developed. Once you get the proposals in, the evaluation process begins. And there's lots of different criteria that can be used to evaluate the process. Typically, one of the most heavily weighed is the experience of the firm, the staff, and in particular, the project manager. Next, we move on to the selection process, which is really usually the fun part. As a professional courtesy, owners should inform all applicants as to whether or not they were selected. And if we all share the evaluation scores and relative ranking, it makes us all stronger as a profession. It helps the people who didn't win a project to understand their shortfalls, and they can come at the next proposal even stronger. It keeps our whole profession competitive. And people who propose often really appreciate the information they get in a debrief and interview. So as an owner, I would encourage people to grant those debrief and interviews. And then next, once a firm is selected, we move into the negotiation, which sounds more daunting than it is really. And this is really the first time where the engineering firm and the owner get to work as a team, as Pete spoke to and Larry spoke to. The goal of the negotiation really is for the parties to come together and ensure that each assumes the appropriate tasks and risks that make it possible to get the greatest level of service for the negotiated engineering fee. And I think when you go into that negotiation with that team attitude, it's not nearly the daunting process that it sounds like in terms of negotiating a schedule and fee and scope. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, who will answer some of the questions. Yes.
Thank you, Maureen. While we have a time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, we've compiled what we believe would be frequently asked questions. And the first one is, what happens if the owner and the AE cannot agree on the fee for the services? So Larry noted earlier that the owner and the architectural engineering firm work cooperatively to develop the scope and the fee. And it's important to note that the owner is in control of the process. So if the negotiations don't go smoothly as planned, the owner can terminate the negotiations and commences negotiation process all over again with the second ranked firm. Second question we have, why not ask for prices from 3 qualified firms? And Peter mentioned earlier in the presentation that the detailed scope is developed in collaboration between the owner and the design professionals. And we believe that in a price-based situation, the price is based on the interpretation of the scope. And Peter also mentioned that low bid opportunities encourages design professionals to provide a bare bones scope. And so in general, all our firms, equally qualified firms, have similar costs associated with doing business. And in a price situation, the main aspect that gets cut is the scope. So does QBS encourage competition? We believe that it does. The process encourages firms to focus on the projects for which they are most qualified or best qualified. Maureen noted that the AE firms make a significant investment in the preparation of qualification packages, and that we believe that the investment by the architecture and engineering firms encourages good faith negotiations. And another frequently asked question, how does the owner know that he is getting a fair price in the negotiation? Well, first of all, I'm sure all of us realize that repeat business is important to the continued success of our firms. And client satisfaction is a major part of that repeat business. And having a reputation of higher fees without the commensurate high quality is not in the best interest of the AE firms. And again, if the owner is not convinced that the fees are fair, he doesn't have to finalize a contract at the end of the negotiations. So with that, I'll hand you all over to Eric.
Thank you, Kevin. So in Massachusetts, QBS is in place on the state level for designer selection for building design under MGL Chapter 7C, and also work with Mass DOT, Massport, and MBTA under Chapter 7C, Section 58. A good resource is the Office of the Inspector General for Designing and Constructing Public Facilities, 9th edition. And on the next slide, you'll see there's some links that we're providing in the presentation to that. ACEC is obviously a great resource for QBS, and their website is listed here. As I mentioned, the Massachusetts Office of Inspector General Guides and Advisories has a lot of great information and resources, including a flow chart, so to speak, of when certain means of acquisition of services is required and what you might need to do, or the owner may need to do to acquire those services, depending on the situation and the size and scope of the project. In addition, the National Institute of Building Sciences and QBS Colorado, who is one of the forefront leaders in QBS in the country, has some great resources as well there. And of course, Abby, we all know Abby. She's also a great resource and a great warehouse of information and supplies and information for all of us. She could be contacted as well for more information. And with that, I'll toss it back to Scott.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eric. This is really the last slide before the Q&A. So what are some of our next steps? So I mean, this was a nice step here to get reacclimated, rebaseline, if you will, with you folks, the member firms, and certainly would encourage you to take this back to your firms and share this message as you will. But again, that the goal is to be able to be outward facing with this and try and approach as many owners within the Commonwealth as possible, to share this message and educate them as to the benefits that they may be missing out on. So I mean, that's at a high level. Some of the things that we're discussing as a committee on how we might be able to do that. I think a simple grassroots way, if you will, is to utilize our membership, and we certainly welcome. Subsequent to this meeting, you can reach out, to any of us on the committee here or through Abby if you have any ideas, just by way of your travels of how you might want to socialize this, connect with some owners. Maybe your firms have relationships with certain owners that you feel could, that might be on the fence and be willing to have a conversation. We're just kind of kicking it off here, coming up with ideas for roundtable discussions with various professional organizations, again, within the Commonwealth, but appreciate the help of all the membership as well. We're considering some activities that we could conduct that has some kind of a benefit for, again, other owners to want to participate. You got to dangle the carrot somehow or another. So maybe some fun events, take advantage of the nice weather out here. Some golf related events are some of the things we're kicking around. Professional society outings where we might have an opportunity to set up a booth. And again, to spread our message. The good news is we have no shortage of information, fly sheets that have been proliferated throughout the country at various other, member organizations, and certainly, on the national website. So that's kind of some of the stuff that we've been talking about as a committee, and we got a lot of energy here. A great bunch of folks that you heard, as you heard today, presenting this, and just again on behalf of the group, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I think we figured this would go like 40 minutes or so, and maybe we went a little quicker here, but hopefully it was valuable, and maybe you learned a few new things today. But at this point, really want to open it up to any questions that you may have, and we'll try and tag team it as a group here. Request to use the chat feature to send any of those in. So thanks again. I'll stop sharing here so we can kind of see all of our faces again.
Hi, it's Betsy from CDW Marketing Manager. Is it all right to just ask the question rather than through the chat?
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Yeah.
Thanks. As a communications person, I'm always interested in what's the biggest point of pain in getting a new owner to understand it. Do you find yourself repeating the same argument, or where's the resistance coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question, Betsy. And I'm certainly going to lean on my colleagues to weigh in and pile on to my sentiment. But I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is, they don't know what they don't know. It's they're embedded within, municipalities, as an example, that, they just are set in their ways from many, many years of previous administrations before them. And this is just, how they do it. And, it takes energy and courage to come up with another concept there that, and it takes work, quite honestly. So, I think that's a hurdle that they would have to overcome. And, one of the things that we're going to try and do is try and, connect the dots, if you will, between, let's say, one of the things you heard earlier was the benefits from a cost perspective. Once a project is underway, minimizing change orders because you've selected a quality-based firm, or the opposite of that is you selected based on price, and you have change orders, that are out of control. So one of our thoughts is to, tap into, public works directors who are tasked with administering some of these contracts, and they've really seen the benefits of this as it plays out over the contract, over the construction, and get them to kind of join our cause and rally together with their colleagues, if you will, with their surrounding towns and things like that, to try and push it from the tail end perspective, if that makes sense. So anybody else weigh in on that, please do. All right, got a question here. Have you identified the state agencies or municipalities that don't use QBS to target for outreach? I don't think we've got a hard and fast list yet. That's a good task. Again, we know it's easier to identify those that do because it's a smaller list. So I think we got some work ahead of us, but certainly appreciate any ideas, that anybody might have in that regard. Any other thoughts, questions?
Yeah, Scott, this is Tom. Just a follow-on to Gary's question about QBS and municipalities. I'm going to, really, first of all, nice job to everyone with the presentation. And all of the panelists are kind of invited to kind of chime in on that, but I'm going to particularly kind of looking over at Larry over there. What do we have to do, or what could we do here in Massachusetts to mirror some of the successes we had down in Rhode Island with enacting a statewide QBS law that would require municipalities to select us based on qualifications?
Well, I'll try to answer this. It's been a long effort to get to where we did first on the municipal level, and Maureen has been more involved in the state level activities, trying to get the Department of Administration to adopt QBS procedures. Number one is education, and it is something that, going back to the days of Rhode Island Consulting Engineers, the Rice organization, we did a lot of talking to legislators, to department heads, trying to convince them that QBS was the right approach in the selection process. We've had many successes when we were able to get the municipal law through that requires municipalities to make selections for design consultants on the basis of QBS. We certainly heard a lot of noise, but for the most part, I'd say probably about 75% of the communities have accepted that and recognized. This was probably one of the, we had a number of public officials who recognized that the RFP process, where they were requesting fees from every firm that would submit, and then selecting the low bidder, they found that their projects came up with problems that they might have been avoided had they taken the time to increase or develop a scope of work that was more appropriate. But it takes many years of dedication and talking to people. It takes continuous education, because all the time the legislators and public employees, they're changing. So you need to educate them over and over again. And then a lot of backroom discussions to get it to the floor. So,
And if I can just add on to that, Larry, National ACEC is conducting a QBS study that's due out in the fall that's going to include case studies. And I think that that's a great way to inform people, because if you give them an actual example of how QBS was useful, or would have been useful on a project that didn't apply it, I think it hits home a little bit more when you have actual case studies to cite to people.
So Maureen, by the way, well, since you're up there, where do we stand on the administrative effort?
We're still working with Rhode Island DOA. They've had some change of directors there, and we're making progress, but we're not quite there yet.
What I heard was Dan talking. I'm sorry, I should probably talk to you on the side, but
Yeah.
Dan McGonaghy, is he?
So we've had conversations with him. Yes.
He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, and he seems like he'll be a friend to us.
Okay.
Yes, friend.
Hey, so sometimes you have to explain to owners just simply why you're not going to submit a proposal. I mean, oftentimes an owner will ask you to submit a proposal, a price-based proposal, and you might find yourself submitting it just because, hey, there's someone you know well, and sometimes you just have to explain to them, I'm not going to submit a proposal for this particular one because it is simply price-based. Sometimes that's part of the education.
Yeah, I would support that, what Peter just said. Absolutely the truth. A number of projects that you walk away from, a number of the clients will come back. Why didn't you submit? They get what they get.
Right.
Yeah, along that lines, and Scott, the first one I would add to your list is DCR. I don't believe, they've been asking for prices, and we did just what Larry just mentioned. There was a project that we were really well suited for. Knew the project manager, it was right up our alley, and we didn't go after it because price was a big deciding factor. And they've been going, although it wasn't presumably the only deciding factor, they'd had a track record of going low bid. They had a very loosely defined scope. You were designing something that you didn't even know what the preferred alternative was going to be. And we walked away. It's disappointing. A lot of others didn't. And, they still ended up, I have no idea how the project's going, but, it's frustrating to see that. And I don't know how that's working out for them, but they're ones that, we've had recent experience, and we don't even chase their work now because of that.
Yeah, that's a good target, Gary. I appreciate that. I would have thought that they would have adopted it, but that's good to know.
Yeah, it's more recent. They didn't in the past. We've done work with them in the past, and it wasn't cost, wasn't a part of the submissions, but in the past couple of years, they've been including price in the submission and in their evaluations.
Interesting. I see a comment here. Seems like it's the procurement directors and town councils who fight the QBS, not the DPWs so much. Can we outreach to them? And that was kind of my point earlier. Certainly we have to change the mindset of the folks that are doing the procurement. Totally agree. One of the strategies is, within their same communities, within their same local government structure, the folks that are maybe having to administer the projects on the back end and who are seeing, the downside, if you will, of not using QBS because, they're in change order mode on a daily basis, hopefully to get them to socialize that within their own form of government. So that's exactly the concept. All right. Any other thoughts?
So, yeah, Scott, I had one, and maybe this is for Abby. So there's all the states around here, Mass, Rhode Island, Connecticut, they all have annual municipal meetings with sessions, and we all always see certain sessions, and there's usually some infrastructure and transportation and funding and all that stuff. And I know QBS may sound boring to their program, but that might be an avenue to try to get on. I mean, starting probably November, they're going to go back live. So the attendance will be there. Maybe that's where at least you get the town administrators, the finance directors. You basically get the non-DPW types at those meetings. And so you'd be talking to people to try to tell them the value and what they should be valuing in their engineering. So I don't know, that might be something. I mean, we're pretty close with MMA and Mass, and I'm not sure if ACEC Rhode Island is very tight with Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, but those might be something to do.
What are the ways? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So for Massachusetts, we actually have done presentations at MMA, typically on the Saturday afternoon of the big annual trade show, in conjunction with Mass DOT, which is a big supporter of QBS. Also, they're required to be a supporter. We've had mixed success. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we are going to pursue the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association, that somebody pointed out the importance of the town councils, but it does take time to persuade people. And one of the things that we're up against is in the training provided by the State Inspector General's office. They do talk about qualifications-based selection. They talk about how it is law for vertical projects, but they do recommend for horizontal projects, despite many attempts on our part to get it changed, to use price where it's not otherwise specified by law. So we're up against that in a way. So it's these smaller groups or smaller group meetings that we could have with municipal officials that are going to make the big difference.
I just wanted that, Maureen, I thought you were going to pitch in there for a minute, but in Rhode Island, we have approached the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns. We've tried to get a panel discussion to get on their agenda. They have refused 3 years running. I don't know if they're still giving us the stiff arm. I do believe at one time we were able to get a booth in one of their sessions. But I can tell you in advance of any of trying to get on the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, we did a mass mailing to all of the cities and towns, their purchasing agents, their public works directors, town engineer, planning department, Sent them a copy of the law along with the ACEC QBS document. Hope we were trying to encourage them to adopt it in their performance of their daily activities. Some of them did. Some of them really, understand. And I think that mirrors most communities throughout New England. And it'll be an effort.
Yeah, and one of the ways we're trying to approach it in Rhode Island is instead of putting it out to talk about QBS, we want to do a panel discussion in the fall about procurement and kind of tie it in with the stimulus money, particularly if that comes federally funded, then some of these municipalities that have been putting out price bid are not going to be able to. So it would almost be like an educational format for them to talk about how to procure their projects using whatever form matches the legal requirements, one of which is QBS. So we are thinking of targeting like purchasing agents and so forth from towns to be at that presentation.
Okay. Last call for questions or comments. Okay, I think we have a wrap for the event. Once again, thanks everybody for joining. Nice to see all your faces. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and hope to see you around. And again, certainly reach out through anybody on the committee or through Abby if you have any other follow-on thoughts or comments. All are welcome for sure.
Thanks
Everyone.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
See you all.